Your $400 Gore-Tex jacket is going to fail you. Not might. Will. The seams delaminate, the DWR coating clogs, the zipper seizes up at -10 degrees, and the whole thing turns into an expensive wet shell, right when your life depends on it. Your butane lighter stops working below freezing. Your GPS batteries die. Your down sleeping bag collapses the moment it touches moisture and loses 90% of its insulating ability. The one thing it existed to do. And while you're standing there in $5,000 of modern gear, slowly going hypothermic, there were men in the 1820s and 1830s living for entire winters across the Rocky Mountains, temperatures dropping to -40, wearing animal hides, carrying hand-forged steel, and eating food mixed by hand from bison and rendered fat. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving, and the science now proves why. Picture the winter of 1823, the forks of the Grand River in what is now South Dakota. A man named Hugh Glass has just been mauled by a grizzly bear. His leg broken, his scalp ripped open, his ribs exposed to the open air. His companions rob him of his weapons, his knife and his fire kit, and they leave him for dead in the snow. No gear, no phone, no emergency beacon. What happens next is one of the most documented survival stories in American history. Hugh Glass sets his own broken leg. He allows maggots to eat his infected flesh to prevent gangrene from spreading. He crawls 200 miles over 6 weeks to Fort Kiowa. He eats wild berries. He scavenges meat from wolf kills. He uses every piece of knowledge that the wilderness itself had taught him, the knowledge he had borrowed from the native peoples of the plains, and he lives. Meanwhile, in that same era, roughly 3,000 mountain men were ranging the Rockies every single winter, using systems so effective that a peer-reviewed study published in the journal Climate Research in 1995 found that traditional indigenous cold-weather clothing significantly outperformed both Canadian military Arctic gear and modern commercial expedition outfits tested at -28 degrees Celsius. So what did they know that we've completely forgotten? Before we go any further, drop a comment right now. Tell me this. What's the one piece of modern survival gear you trusted completely and it let you down at the worst possible moment? Because what you're about to discover is going to change how you look at every piece of equipment you own. Walk into any outdoor gear store today and look at the winter section. You'll find synthetic insulation rated to -20, laminated waterproof shells, battery-powered heated gloves, GPS-enabled avalanche beacons, and canister stoves designed for alpine conditions. Spend enough time in that store and you'll leave having dropped $1,000 believing you are now prepared. Here's what they don't put on the hang tag. Isobutane, the primary fuel in those canister stoves, stops vaporizing at 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that temperature, your stove produces nothing. The backup, butane, stops vaporizing at 31 degrees, barely below freezing. Your lighter fails at the same threshold. Nylon's tensile strength drops 15 to 20% in extreme cold. Your zipper's operating force increases 200 to 400% below -10. Some generic zippers bind completely and never open again. Lithium-ion batteries lose 20 to 30% of their capacity at freezing and can fail entirely below -20. Meanwhile, a mountain man in 1835 carried a piece of flint, a high-carbon steel striker, and a tin of charred punk wood. His ignition system worked at any temperature in any weather. Wind actually made it faster. That is the gap between a system built on accumulated knowledge and a product built to a price point. Here's where it gets worse. This wasn't an accident. The shift from traditional survival knowledge to synthetic commercial gear happened through a specific industrial timeline. And the people who benefited from that shift are not you. DuPont invented nylon in the late 1930s. World War II poured government money into synthetic materials. After the war, mountains of surplus gear flooded civilian markets. 10th Mountain Division skis sold for $1 a pair. Veterans from that division went on to found outdoor companies and ski resorts, and an entire commercial outdoor industry was built on the idea that skill could be replaced by product. Gore-Tex arrived in 1976, Polar Fleece in 1979. By the 1980s, every piece of traditional knowledge, hide tanning, natural layering systems, calorie-dense wilderness food, botanical navigation, was positioned as primitive and replaced by something with a brand name. The outdoor industry did not do this because the new products were better. They did it because the new products could be sold. And the hidden cost is this: the moment your battery dies, the moment your membrane delaminates, the moment your synthetic insulation gets wet, you have nothing to fall back on. Because the knowledge was taken from you before you ever had a chance to learn it. That is not your fault. The system was designed that way. So let's go through what they actually knew. 15 skills, 15 pieces of a system so complete and so effective that it sustained life for decades in terrain that still kills people today. The first is brain tanning. Every animal, the old saying goes, but has exactly enough brains to test in its own hide. And it's roughly true. Mountain men learned this from the Lakota, the Crow, the Blackfoot, and every other Plains nation that had refined the process over thousands of years. Brain tissue contains naturally emulsified lipids that penetrate the collagen fibers of the hide at a molecular level. The hide is soaked in a solution of brain and hot water, worked by hand while drying, stretched repeatedly, then smoked over a low fire. That smoking step is critical. The resinous tars from wood smoke bond permanently with the brain oils and lock them into the leather. The result is something modern leather cannot match: a hide that is soft, supple, breathable, wind-resistant, water-repellent, and that dries soft instead of stiffening into board when it gets wet. A modern chrome-tanned leather stiffens. Brain-tanned buckskin does not. When a mountain man's shirt got soaked, crossing a river in January, he kept moving, and the garment dried as he walked, pliable and warm. A modern leather jacket in the same situation would freeze rigid in minutes. The second is the buffalo robe. Only winter hides, taken November through March when the fur was thickest, were suitable. The fur trapped enormous volumes of still air, and still air is the actual mechanism behind all insulation, synthetic or natural, but buffalo fur went beyond simple trapping. Research published in Optics Express in 2014 found that individual animal hairs scatter and reflect infrared radiation back toward the body through a process of repeated backscattering between fibers. A physics mechanism that synthetic insulation has not yet replicated. Fort Union traded roughly 40,000 robes per year by the 1840s. Every one of those robes was an engineered insulation system refined over millennia. The third is wool, specifically the Mountain Man capote, a full-length coat cut from Hudson's Bay wool blankets. Wool is chemically alive in a way that synthetics are not. When wool fiber absorbs water vapor, the keratin protein in the cortex bonds with moisture molecules and releases approximately 1.1 kilojoules of heat per gram absorbed. Think of it like an exothermic chemical reaction inside your jacket. Your wet garment is actively generating warmth. 1 kilogram of dry wool can produce heat equivalent to an electric blanket running for 8 hours, just from absorbing the humidity in cold air. Synthetics do none of this. They pass moisture through, they wick it away, but they do not generate heat from it. Wool also retains 60 to 80% of its insulating value when wet. Down retains roughly 10%. The fourth is flint and steel, fire starting with char cloth. Flint struck against high-carbon steel shaves off microscopic steel particles that combust spontaneously at approximately 800 degrees Celsius, landing on charred natural fiber to create a glowing coal. That coal is transferred to a tinder bundle, dried grass, shredded birch bark, cattail down, and blown into flame. No batteries, no fuel canister, no failure point except the skill of the person holding the steel. Modern lighters fail at 31 degrees. Flint and steel works at -60. Wind, which kills a lighter instantly, accelerates an open coal. The fifth is the Dakota fire hole, a technique originating with the Dakota Sioux. 2 holes dug in the ground, connected by an angled tunnel. The main hole holds the fire. The secondary hole serves as an air intake. The tunnel creates a bellows effect, pulling fresh oxygen beneath the flame and dramatically increasing combustion temperature while using half the fuel of a surface fire. The subterranean design also eliminates visible smoke and the fire's glow, critical for men who were sometimes being hunted. Modern camp stoves attempt the same airflow physics with metal baffles. The Dakota fire hole requires a stick to dig it. The sixth is the fire reflector and long fire system. A wall of stacked green logs built behind the fire reflects radiated heat toward the sleeping area. Documented accounts describe lean-to shelters with reflector fires reaching 60 degrees Fahrenheit at the sleeping surface, with outside temperatures at 20 degrees, a 40-degree differential, with no insulation, no sleeping bag, just physics. The long fire, a fire as long as the sleeping person, built from logs 6 inches thick that burned slowly through the night, radiated heat evenly across the entire body rather than just the feet. The seventh is the debris hut, an A-frame shelter made from dead branches and packed under 3 to 4 feet of dry leaves, grass, and pine needles. No fire required. Body heat alone raises the interior to near core temperature. In 2008, survival instructor Tom Elpel documented sleeping comfortably in a debris hut at -19 degrees Fahrenheit in Wisconsin without fire, sleeping bag, or extra blankets. The insulating principle is identical to a down jacket, trapped still air, but the material is free and available anywhere there are trees. The eighth is the snow cave. Packed snow is approximately 90% trapped air. A 2-foot snow wall achieves an insulation R value of 10 to 15, comparable to a well-insulated residential wall. Interior temperatures hold at 25 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, even when exterior conditions reach -40. A temperature differential of up to 72 degrees, sustained indefinitely with no fire and no sleeping bag. A single candle adds another 5 to 10 degrees. Inuit families in traditionally constructed igloos with fur liners historically sat bare-chested inside while blizzards raged outdoors. The ninth is pemmican. If you find this valuable, if this is changing how you see your gear bag, hit like right now, because this one skill alone is worth the entire video. Pemmican is the most calorie-dense portable food in pre-industrial history, 2,900 to 3,800 calories per pound, depending on fat ratio. The composition is simple: 1 part dried, pounded lean bison to 1 part rendered tallow by weight, dried berries for palatability, packed in rawhide bags sealed with melted fat. The Lakota called their version wasna, meaning anything ground up, and archaeological finds have recovered wasna, caches hundreds of years old, still containing viable food. For comparison, modern military MREs deliver 770 to 1,170 calories per pound, roughly 2.5 to 5 times less than pemmican. Mountain men needed 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day in winter. Pemmican was the only food that could carry that load. No refrigeration, no resupply, no expiration date. The 10th is pine needle tea for vitamin C. Pine needles contain between 0.72 and 1.87 milligrams of ascorbic acid per gram, and winter concentrations peak 4 to 7 times higher than summer levels. This knowledge saved the crew of French explorer Jacques Cartier in 1536, when Iroquois guides showed them how to brew conifer tea and reversed an outbreak of scurvy that had killed 25 men. The tree was named Arbor Vitae, Tree of Life. Mountain men on long winter traps boiled pine needles and drank the tea. A cup from an ounce of fresh needles reportedly provides several times the daily vitamin C requirement. This required no trade post, no supply chain, and no supplement bottle. The 11th is the moccasin and grass insulation system. Mountain men adopted the double moccasin system from plains and subarctic peoples, an oversized buffalo hide outer moccasin worn fur inward over a regular moccasin, the gap stuffed with dried grass, cattail down, or loose animal hair. Daniel Tribou described making socks to go over our shoes with buffalo skins, putting the wool inside, on the Kentucky frontier in 1778. The flexibility of this system is what modern winter boots cannot replicate. Rigid boots, even slightly too tight, compress blood vessels and cut circulation. Alpine medicine experts note that over 90% of foot frostbite injuries result from inadequate or poorly fitted footwear. The moccasin's pliability meant blood kept flowing, and the grass insulation could be replaced from the ground when it compacted. Your Thinsulate boot cannot do that. The 12th is the Type's thermal engineering. The dew cloth, a 6-foot interior liner attached to the lodge poles, created a dead air insulating gap between the inner and outer surfaces, deflected rain, and directed airflow upward through the smoke hole. In severe cold, Lakota families added a second stuffed liner between the layers, constructed 12-foot windbreaks around the teepee perimeter, and installed an ozone, an interior canopy over sleeping areas, creating effectively a teepee within a teepee. Snow was banked around the base to seal the ground gap. The adjustable smoke flaps at the apex created controllable natural chimney draft. This system sustained comfortable habitation at -40 Fahrenheit for entire communities, not just individual survivors. The 13th is stellar navigation. Polaris, the North Star, indicates true north to within approximately 1 degree and is immune to battery failure, magnetic interference, and GPS signal loss. Jim Bridger memorized the night sky over the entire Rocky Mountain region and navigated by it for 40 years across terrain that had never seen a map. The technique is straightforward. Find the Big Dipper's 2 pointer stars, Dubhe and Merak, and extend a line 5 times the distance between them. You arrive at Polaris. Orion's belt rises due east and sets due west, the most accurate natural east-west reference on Earth. Bridger's mental geographic map was so precise that Colonel William Collins copied it onto paper in 1862, and it survives today at the American Heritage Center. A man who could not read a single written word produced a map that shaped the routes of the Overland Trail and the Union Pacific Railroad. The 14th is reading snow and wind signs. Snow drift orientation reveals prevailing wind direction. Sastrugi, wind-carved ridges and open snow, align with prevailing winds, which in most of North America run from the southwest to northeast, providing orientation without any instrument. Snow lingering longer on north-facing slopes confirms direction. Crust layers read like a thermometer record, revealing the temperature cycling history of the past several weeks. Fresh powder, 90 to 95% trapped air, identifies the best shelter-building material and the worst travel conditions. Mountain men read these signs the way a modern pilot reads instruments. Without them, they were blind. The 15th, and perhaps the most important, is fat consumption as a thermal fuel. Modern winter survivalists are told to eat carbohydrates for fast energy. Mountain men ate rendered fat. The science backs them up completely. Fat metabolism generates more heat per calorie than carbohydrate metabolism, and it burns at a sustained rate rather than the spike and crash cycle of glucose. Fat also metabolizes with minimal water demand, reducing dehydration risk. The body generates heat as a byproduct of fat digestion, a phenomenon called diet-induced thermogenesis. Cold weather military nutrition research published in the journal Polar Research confirms that fat intake becomes disproportionately important at extreme cold, and Norwegian troops in winter training require fat-heavy rations to maintain core temperature during extended operations. So, why did we abandon all of this? 3 reasons in order. Speed, brain tanning. A single hide takes 3 to 5 days of continuous labor. Industrial chrome tanning takes 48 hours and processes thousands of hides in a single factory shift. Cost. A Crow woman who could tan 20 hides per winter was worth more economically than any European tool. Her knowledge couldn't be bottled. And third, new technology created the illusion that the old knowledge was no longer necessary. Cheap synthetic fiber, injection molded plastic, lithium battery chemistry. Each one appeared to make a piece of the old system obsolete. The problem is that each new technology also introduced a new failure point. Dead batteries, delaminated membranes, frozen fuel canisters, collapsed down, snapped plastic. The old system had no single point of failure because the knowledge itself was the system, and knowledge cannot break. Here's what you can do with this right now. The easiest entry point: replace your butane lighter with a ferrocerium rod and a piece of char cloth. Practice striking it in your backyard this week. That single habit gives you a fire-starting system that works at any temperature in any weather, with no moving parts and no fuel. When you're ready for the next step, replace your synthetic base layer with a merino wool base layer. 70% or more wool content. It will cost more, it will last 4 times longer, warm you when it's wet, and stop producing the odor of wet synthetic after 2 days in the field. And the full commitment: learn to make pemmican, dried lean meat, rendered tallow, optional dried berries, 1-to-1 by weight. Pack it in a sealed container. Carry it as your emergency ration. A pound of pemmican in your pack is worth more than any energy bar in any emergency scenario, and it costs almost nothing to make. The men who ranged the Rocky Mountains in the 1820s and 1830s were not primitive. They were engineers working with the most sophisticated materials available to them, refined by thousands of years of human testing in the harshest environments on Earth. Jim Bridger, Hugh Glass, Kit Carson, Jedediah Smith. They weren't lucky. They were operating a complete, integrated survival system that the outdoor industry told you to replace with products, and then blamed you when those products failed. The knowledge wasn't lost, it was sold away from you. Subscribe to this channel because we're going back through 200 years of forgotten wilderness knowledge that the modern outdoor industry buried, and we're bringing it back, skill by skill. Tell us in the comments, what do you want us to dig into next?